Hello, my name is Hakon, and welcome back to my channel and another episode in my ongoing series where I talk about my project of writing a fantasy game book. Last episode, which I did entirely in my new language of Latake, which is the one I've made for this project, I talked about the writing system a little bit, not in too much detail, of course, because that would take me quite a long time to script, since I don't know my language that well yet. But I think that the ease of writing the script for the last video tells me that I think I've fleshed out my language enough that I've got everything I need that I might need to use it for. That is to say, I don't need to create all the really fine details of its grammar yet. And if I encounter something that I need to sort out that I haven't decided on yet, it'll be quite easy for me to do, because it is easy for me to add grammar to a language and make it make sense, apparently. It does help to know a little bit about the grammar of languages in general and the grammar of English, which is surprisingly complex, actually. So I'm quite happy with the language. I do need to make a new font, of course, make it look, because the one I've got now is really mechanically stylized, just really straight lines. I want to make a font that looks like it was sort of carved or scraped into stone or bark or something like that. Maybe a little bit wider as well. That is going to be the one that I use for decorative things in the book. So that's the language is fine. I've also thought a little bit more about the concept of a rite of passage that I want to use in my book. I've thought a little bit about what it will entail, a little bit more about the details, a little bit more about the background for it. So if you haven't watched a few episodes ago, I talked about how one of the best ways to not only do world building, but also to actually show the world building in a book and a game book is to have the main character, which of course is the reader, perform a kind of rite of passage. And I've decided this is something that all the kids of this people, it's mostly a village really, they will all have to go through a kind of rite of passage where they spend 1 year on their own in a certain area geographically that has significance to their history and their religion. And also it will be a test of survival and a test of character as well, hopefully. I will be able to integrate that. And of course, a major part of that ritual is that you are meant to experience close contact with divinity as well, which also will teach you something about the religion and the actual, which of course will be an actual true religion, I suppose, in this case, because the deities they believe in actually exist. This is one thing that is quite common, of course, in fantasy fiction, is that deities are real, whereas this you can't really say the same of human religion, where of course all religions can be classed as superstitions because there is no evidence for anything to do with religion. So that's part of what I've been planning now, and I've also created a plausible reason for the people of the village doing this to their kids, because when you think about it, if you turf someone out at the age of say 16 and say they just throw them in the water, let them drift with the current to get stranded on some other part of the land, on the other side of the fjord, for instance, and then they have to survive for a year and also not drown on the way across, you are really risking their lives, and you really need to justify the benefit of doing this. And of course, if you have the justification of the religion, that does make sense, but of course there are other justifications too. But also I thought it was nice to have a tie-in with an actual event, historical event, that is important to the religion of this people. So what I imagined was that this rite of passage the concept of it started as a kind of accident. So I'm imagining that there was a boy of that certain age that fell into the water, for instance, from a boat as they were fishing. These people do fish a lot. Fishing is really important to them. And he got carried off with the current. They weren't able to get him. They didn't know where he might have gone with an undercurrent under the water, and they couldn't catch him. They couldn't find him again. And he ended up spending a year on his own in a different part of the land. So I'm thinking on the other side of a fjord, and he would have gone up into the mountains, and there he would have experienced things. He would have seen, for instance, relics of the past for this people who may have at some point been in a wider spread area, and they would have holy sites. There could be stone circles, it could be caves with paintings, it could be different things like that that tie in with the religion of the people and the history of the people, and many, and perhaps even things that were forgotten about by this people because of something that happened. Some cataclysmic event might have pushed them out of that area. Whatever knowledge and lore was part of it may have been forgotten, or certainly a lot of it. And so this boy who fell in the water and survives for a year before he comes back is the one that brings back this lore, this religion, maybe even the writing to this people, because he saw it himself. He may even have met gods and things like that, or other spiritual beings on his journey. And so therefore, it has become a rite of passage that all children have to experience something similar. It's like in honor of this first person who to whom that happened by accident, and they have to go to the same area. They have to see the same things, which of course now is a sacred area that you normally wouldn't go. And then you come back a year later, having survived, having grown as a person, having learned about the past, about the history, about the religion and culture of the people. And then you come back and you tell your story, and yeah, that sort of thing. So I think that's quite a good concept to run with. And of course, the big challenge for me is to find out what kind of challenges will they face on the way, and how will I describe those, and etc. So, but there are many things you can do, of course, in this kind of with this kind of starting point. You have many elements of survival, for instance, where you have to build a shelter, you have to find food, you have to survive the winter as well. I'm imagining this starting at midsummer, actually. So midsummer to midsummer is going to be the year, and you have to survive or do the right thing in encounters with, for instance, bears and wolves, which usually aren't dangerous to people, but of course, in some circumstances, they can be. And all these things, of course, there are geographical hazards. You might fall off a cliff. You can do all sorts of things can happen. So there are many things that I want that can include in a story like that might work as an adventure, as a game book. So that's my starting point, and that's where I'm at the moment with my actual story, and also how everything then ties together with the world building as well, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. Because as with Tolkien, the world building and the languages and everything actually creates the story in a way as well. So I really like that, and how I can do that in a game book. Another thing that probably will not be part of this project, but I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who had watched my first video in this series, and he had a little thought that I thought was quite interesting when it comes to different things to think about when making a game book. And one thing that he mentioned was that, is there a way, as a question, is there a way to make a game book into a sort of a roguelite? And of course, roguelite is a kind of a subgenre of game. Usually we're talking computer games now, where you have some of the elements of Rogue, the original game, or a rogue like, which is like Rogue but not quite the same. And of course, one of the main elements of a rogue game is that it's procedural. So what you experience from one playthrough to the next is not going to be the same. The map is going to change. A maze, usually something like that, is going to change. The landscape is going to change from one playthrough to the next. That's one thing. Also, in a proper rogue or roguelike, you start from scratch every time. But in a roguelite, it's quite common that with every playthrough, something will change, either in the world itself or there's something that happens that will make your next playthrough easier. For instance, by gaining experience, and your abilities might get better. You might keep some equipment from your first playthrough, etc., etc. So there are certain things here that can be used in the game book, or certainly elements of it. So there is certainly something that can be done in the game book is to have random things. So for instance, let's imagine that you get to a junction and you turn left or you turn right, but for left and right, there might be more than one numbered paragraph you can go to. And that is decided by a die roll, for instance. And that's your procedural generation. You can have this, it doesn't have to be all the way through, but you could have several places like this where you will actually get to different things on each consecutive playthrough. That's one element of a sort of roguelite you can include. Another one is that what you do in the game can affect what happens on your next playthrough. For instance, if you kill a certain monster or being or character, then on the next playthrough, that character or monster or being might still be dead because he was killed the previous time. And so you would need some kind of system of keeping track of what has happened before. It doesn't have to be for everything in the game book, but it could be for certain elements in the game book. And of course, this can be handled with some kind of code word or sort of a flag marker system. Different ways of doing it. For instance, what can happen is if you kill someone, you can sort of say, then you get code word something, buzzard, whatever it is. And then on the next playthrough, then you've made a note of this on your character sheet that you've got code word buzzard, and you get to a place and it says, if you have code word buzzard, go to this paragraph. If you don't, then go to that paragraph. So that sort of thing. Then there are also, it's also possible to say that when you die in your playthrough, that you can start over, but one of your abilities will go up. So for that to make sense, you have to, I think it also makes sense to start with quite low abilities as well, so that it gets easier and easier. So for instance, imagine in a sort of a fighting fantasy context that you always start your first adventure with skill 7, stamina 14, and luck 7. And only on consecutive playthroughs will you be able to increase these base abilities. And also, for instance, it's possible that you get to keep some of the equipment you find that gives you bonuses as well. But of course, this kind of style of game would only, where you get increased abilities, would usually only work best if you also have some of that random generation effect as well. Because in the normal fighting fantasy game book, what you learn from one playthrough to the next is the map. It's where you've been, the choices you've made, and you know the outcomes of them. And so that's something that is fixed usually in the game book. You know what's going to happen next time if you make the same choice. So if you get that information, that is also a kind of an information that improves your chances for the next time. But if you want to combine that with other things that improve your chances, it's going to be harder to balance. But if you also add that element of randomness to what happens when you turn right or left, that can balance out a little bit. And there might be something else around the corner next time you go. So that's an interesting thought. And it's not something I'm probably going to be using in this game book project, but I do like to sort of mention different things that I think about that would be interesting for any kind of game book development now, because I am interested in all aspects of of game books and how things can be done. And even if it doesn't have any bearing on my current project, it's still something I will want to mention. So every time I think about things like this, or I get ideas from others, in this case, it's something I don't mind making a little video about and talking about, because others might find that interesting, and it might give them ideas or kernels of ideas that they might use in their own interactive fiction. Right. Was there anything else I wanted to say today? I don't actually think so. So it was basically to say that my language is now where I need it to be, I think, in order for me to use it the way I want to, and also how I've fleshed out certainly the basic concept of the start of the book. I also have some ideas for other things for how to end it as well, but I'm not sure how I'm gonna. It depends a little bit on the size of it now, because one thing that I have been toying a little bit with the idea that I may want to make it more, possibly more than one book. I'm not sure if I want to make the whole journey of this rite of passage from the beginning, the whole year, necessarily in one book. I've also toyed with the idea of splitting it up a little bit, so that you have actually a series of books that take you through that first year. That's one idea I had. Another idea is that you do go through the whole year, but then something, of course, might have happened to your village when you were away, and so you actually get that opening for a sequel, and then of course that sequel will be about perhaps using the kind of stuff that you learned in the first book to complete the quest of finding out what happened, maybe even saving your friends and families and all those things, depending on what happened. It's just an idea I had, just sort of very loosely. There's nothing concrete about that, but I think that would sort of make a nice, unsurprising perhaps, twist to it. But it would have been, it's the kind of thing that has been used before, of course. But I just think that would be quite an interesting way of continuing the story, and to add drama to it, to end it with that kind of thing. Anyway, so I'll leave you with that for now, and I hope you found this a little bit interesting. I do like talking about this kind of thing, because it's quite an the more I think about how to write a game book, the more complex a kind of subject it becomes. There are more and more elements of things that you need to think about, and I certainly have played game book style stories that are written by people who don't really think about these things. And to be honest, some of them aren't really that good, because if you don't think things through and give things a reason for being the way they are, then it all seems a bit random and haphazard, and to be honest, it becomes less fun, which of course is the whole point. It's a game. A game is by its very nature supposed to have entertainment value and also give you a sense of achievement. So both those two things together are what makes a good game good. So challenging, entertainment value, sense of achievement. Of course, you don't get a sense of achievement unless it is challenging. So yeah, they do tie together. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye for now. Bye bye.